We're in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giuliano, she, her, and hers, and I am the Senior Partnerships Manager here at AllVoices. Today, I am very excited to welcome our next guest onto the interview series, Susan Russo. She is a HR consultant, professor, and speaker. Susan, thank you so much for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself for our listeners, including your pronouns and when you were younger, do you remember how exactly to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Hi, Christina. Thank you for having me. I'm Susan Russo, she, her, hers, and I am a former corporate HR person turned consultant. And I also spend a lot of time in academia. I have always enjoyed being a student myself, and I've never stopped being a learner. I probably never will. So, what I wanted to be when I grew up may seem a little different than that. I wanted to be a figure skater.
I
That was the big goal. That was the dream.
I love that answer. And you fast forward to today, you mentioned kind of your experience in the field, and now you're consulting folks on creating those really great places, best in class to work as well. Are there kind of patterns you've seen in terms of that kind of company culture over time and changes you've observed really in the workplace since the pandemic started in 2020?
I have. I think that prior to the pandemic, every organization had a unique culture. I think some of the more common ones were either very rule focused, bureaucracy focused. Everybody understood how to get something done. They may not have liked how to get something done, but they understood how to get something done within a system of rules. There may have also been a very market or product driven culture. I think we were starting to pivot toward more focus on customer experience, user experience. And I think for sure after the pandemic, we've definitely embraced more of a customer focused culture. And that does trickle into the employees because we realize that they have unique needs and wants too. And in order to deliver for our customers, we need to view our employees as a customer too. So I think there's a lot more of that focus than there had been prior. We were starting to get there, but I think we definitely lurched forward as a result of the pandemic.
I definitely agree that we have kind of moved forward, really thought about employees as customers, as you were talking about, and kind of rethinking that employee value proposition, really anyone who interacts with the employer brand as well, because people are looking for different things at different points of their career, different points of their lives. We've all heard the kind of phrase, you don't leave a bad company, you leave a bad manager, or you stay for that reason as well. And I know kind of in our previous discussions to really when we're talking about interviewing really impactful managers, as you mentioned, one of the questions that you ask, which I absolutely love, is what does productivity mean to you? Are there any other questions that we should be really asking folks, who are potential or even current managers?
I think so. And I think because we are modifying our workplace itself, we're doing a lot more remote and virtual workplaces than we have in the past. It will be important to make sure someone can stay connected to others. So I may even ask a question like, what does connection mean to you? And of course, we want to talk about accountability, but that's in context with goals and expectations and delivering on those. But I would say for sure connection is one to definitely touch on in addition to productivity too.
In terms of kind of what does productivity mean to you and what does really connection mean to you as well when you are listening to these answers, are there any red flags that you look to in folks? For example, what does productivity mean to you? I look at how many emails were sent, how many clicks on the screen, what have you.
Right, that's an excellent question. So I think that the answers also are going to be different based on the role, based on the level within an occupation as well. So if somebody is an individual contributor, the answer for productivity is going to look a lot different than a manager, director, VP level answer around productivity. So I think what we need to see as someone evolves into a leadership role is the pivot away from I, me, my, and we and ours. So, productivity, I would like to see answers that touch on what obstacles did a manager remove that were a problem, or what resources did the manager think of to provide that could help facilitate productivity? So I like to see that shift once we stop producing at the individual contributor level and now we take responsibility for others that are reporting up to us, that we are careful not to bring in or encourage micromanagers, micromanagement, and that instead we have people who truly are investing in development and growth so that the people reporting up to them can also advance to that next level as well.
Yeah, that investment in the development, the growth, the use of kind of the pronouns there for team members too, because it is a shift in mentality from being literally an individual, being responsible for your numbers, your goals, but really helping to motivate a team and also remove barriers, remove those obstacles as you were
Mhm.
talking about as well. Are there any other kind of green flags that you look for in either of those questions too?
I think it's hard for people to acknowledge their own learning or mistakes, but I give a lot of credit to people who can say, in the past, I learned something from having done it the wrong way. And as a result, I'm interested in not only fixing that and doing it better, but sharing my secrets with others. Because it tends to happen is that we don't want to share our secrets, right? Because if I stop being special, you don't need me anymore. So we definitely want to work with people and managers and leaders who share that wisdom. Wisdom is best gained through experience, and those experiences aren't always going to be that everything was easy and happy and everything went smoothly. Really, wisdom is coming from overcoming challenges, learning from mistakes, taking accountability, improving it. But then again, we want to bottle that up and share it. So I would say I definitely favor candidates who can share that and are willing to share that wisdom with others.
Yeah, you definitely want to share kind of how you are working day to day and then also open up to collaboration. Have that mindset of when one ship rises, all ship rises as well. And really make sure that you're sharing that wisdom across the board, that experience. We talked about removing barriers,
Mhm,
also being kind of open and vulnerable to saying, I made a mistake here and this is what I learned too, modeling that behavior.
mhm.
I've certainly had good managers and really outstanding managers as well. In your perspective, what's the difference between that good manager and that really kind of great, fantastic manager going the extra mile?
Mhm. I think that the fantastic manager is one that we know cares about us, one that we know believes in us and is rooting for us to succeed. It's almost more of a feeling than it is a quantifiable list of attributes, if that makes sense. It's the way that people make us feel, that we know someone is rooting for us. That's motivational. That in and of itself will inspire us to do more, to contribute more, to share more, to grow more. So these are the feelings really that I think happen as a result of all of the really good behaviors that we talk about.
Absolutely. I think that is really important, and I would agree with that as well. I know, in addition to really great managers and leaders and executives, and really kind of the patterns that we've seen also since the pandemic started, is this change to remote first, hybrid, or just a change of the role of the workplace in general. And when we're making those changes, it's really important to have a framework or a guide to success for how people can feel empowered to do their jobs, no matter where they are in office, at home, any day of the week. What are some examples of those common, ground rules or frameworks for a hybrid workplace?
I would say one of the most important is around communication. So what are the rules around reaching someone, of understanding if they're not available, things that we can put into place so that expectations are met, people are providing what they should be providing, and also on the other end receiving what they should be receiving. That all starts with communication and expectation setting.
Yeah, transparent communication and also continuous and constant communication, knowing that things can change and you really want to be open to being agile and making those adjustments as you
Hmm.
continue to move forward as well. I think this is also a really good opportunity when we're talking about kind of the different role of the office or the workplace as well to really do things differently. How have you
Yes.
seen, yeah, your clients and organizations really intentionally redesign inclusive office spaces in this hybrid environment?
And that's exactly what it is. It's redesigning and it's really reevaluating it. So I think some of the older rules that we used to work within were just this is the workplace, it's where you go to get the work done. It was just the way. And right, and people were starting to ask about flexibility, and there were huge numbers. I think that over 80% of employers were allowing like one flexible day. That's what we called it, flexible day. One flexible day here and there. And that even is pre-pandemic. So of course there are always the roles that are going to be they're going to happen on site if somebody is, taking care of a patient, whether that's another person, an animal, what have you. That's going to be in a specialized environment. But what we would do then is say, well, everybody who works in this organization has to come on site because they are. And that right there is the first thing we started reevaluating during the pandemic was, well, wait a minute, because we were trying to reduce headcount. So the first thing we took a look at was who really doesn't need to be here. Let's get them out, right, to reduce the headcount. So then we started to acknowledge that the work can be done in another place. A lot of the work can be done in another place. And we've started to acknowledge that people, again, with the right managers that we talked about earlier, will be just as productive. If not, they might even be more productive because they've gotten some time back in their day to invest in themselves, be it health or whatever other pursuits. But now as by virtue of those people feeling appreciative of what they've gotten back, they're willing to contribute more. So we definitely see a positive outcome there in that regard. So I think that again, when you've got that combination of what are the communication protocols, how do people find you if they need you? What can they expect in terms of project completion or response to a request for assistance? We will see very positive outcomes from those arrangements.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the conversations around a results kind of oriented workplace and really
Mhm,
setting those expectations for success and making sure that people know how to communicate and contact you, which is a little bit different as well. And I definitely agree that, folks are getting back commute time and just that flexibility to, wear those many hats that you wear inside and outside of work too, and really work more flexibly, more agility in your day as
mhm,
well. Kind of combining these two themes of what we were talking about in terms of really great leaders and managers and this hybrid workplace. How
mhm.
can managers and also team members as well really avoid that FaceTime bias or built up resentment in a hybrid environment when folks are on potentially different schedules and things like that?
And the resentment is really interesting because you initially think of it as something that's happening to the people who are working from home, right? Getting the follow-up phone call. Oh, did you see the email that I just sent you, 4 minutes ago? I was just calling to make sure that you got that. So we think about that, and that's valid. There is resentment there, but then there's also resentment that the employer is receiving from those who were coming in. Oh, will you let that one have more flexibility than I get? So there is resentment all the way around. And I think that goes back to what you mentioned earlier about reassessing the jobs and not just keep doing what we were doing because it's how we did it before, but really evaluating what needs to be here and what doesn't. And I think where the resentment is coming from is that there's a change now. Something is different than the way it used to be before. And the resentment, I think, comes from people who feel like someone else got something that they didn't get. It's not fair. So, what do we need to look at role by role? to make sure that people understand the expectations for the role. Is the resentment coming from someone who feels that they shouldn't have to be on site? Maybe that does need to be looked at. Maybe they don't need to be on site. Or is it coming from someone who is burnt out, overworked? Do they need more resources in their role? Do they need some obstacles removed from their role? So I think that the resentment yeah, it's definitely a feeling that people feel, but we need to diagnose where it's coming from so that we can properly resolve it, because I think that it's going to have a different cause depending on the role, depending on the individual performing the role, and depending on what an employer will and won't allow and for who.
Absolutely. Looking at the root cause of why someone does feel this way and kind of what can be done structurally or from that organizational level perspective, oftentimes job specific to making sure that, you're asking those questions and having a conversation with your team is really important there as well.
Mhm.
I know we talked about kind of patterns since the pandemic, kind of strategies that you've seen work really well, questions to ask current and potential managers. Susan, is there anything that I didn't specifically ask that you want to share with folks who are listening or underscore any key takeaways you really hope folks bring with them?
Just a couple around interviewing. So, of course, the behavioral based interviewing for anyone that's going to join an organization. And I do kind of a blend of the structured based on competencies, right? So, competencies, we could define those for the organization and the role. Big ones are connection and accountability, defining what that means, and then framing out behavioral based questions in advance so that every candidate is asked the same question. Because if, one word skews an entire candidate answer, and then we can't properly compare candidates, and that's an interviewer bias that we definitely want to avoid. But we take that blend so that we're doing our behavioral based interviews for bringing people in. But there's still people that work for us now, so it wouldn't hurt to go and try to do something like a stay interview where we sit people down and ask them about what is working well, what is not working well. This is a great opportunity to learn about the obstacles that people are experiencing in the moment and have the ability to try to resolve those. So interviewing basically all the way around is what I'm encouraging. Not even the people, not just the people that we're deciding to hire, but also the people who are here now. I think that good workers appreciate good attention. So that means not just walking by, thinking about management by walking around, which was a really valid concept, but then got watered down to the extent that some people think it literally means just walk around. So good workers don't really appreciate that, right? So if there's a purpose around that, in that managers are talking to people, getting to know them, and really using that as an opportunity for the stay interview to find out what can we do to either remove a problem or provide a resource. That's valuable management that people appreciate. And again, it all goes back to the conversations that we have with the people, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. That connection, those conversations that you're having, the relationships that you are intentionally and purposefully building is really important. And heard a lot about those stay interviews, asking folks why they're staying in the organization, really having that conversation as well, whether you're the manager or executive too, is critical as well. Susan, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture this afternoon.
Thank you, Christina.
Of course, and as a reminder for folks who are listening at AllVoices, we really believe in both employees and employers being seen, heard, and understood, and know it's a requirement for the business to really succeed overall. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.